Hi, everyone. Wow. It's good to be here. So I brought a couple books with me, as I usually do. My title is called Life and Death. We have questions, Spirit has answers. A deeper dive from the edge of consciousness. So my favorite one about death, life and death, is this book by Neil Donald Walsh called Home with God. When I was, after I was diagnosed with cancer a year ago, instead of trying to learn more about cancer, I started reading books about death and dying, and actually mostly near-death experiences. And the best one is Anita Moorjani, Dying to Be Me. And I'll read a little bit from this book later on. This is called Eat Mangoes Naked by Sark. Finding pleasure everywhere and dancing with the pits. I've used this book many times. She just brings everything to a place of, yes, that's it. Yes, that's it. So what follows are some of my personal interpretations of what Spirit is trying to tell us. So I encourage you not to believe what I say, because it's just my opinion. But take an idea or two and think about it. I've been interested in death for quite some years because in the early 80s, my mother died, and then in the early 90s, my father died, and I was not present at their death. And I always wanted to, I had always wanted to be. And I was, however, at the death of my father-in-law, and that was you've heard my story many times. The room was full of angels, and it was just very powerful and very uplifting for me. But what I do realize is that most of us have a lot of fear about death, and yet this is a totally inevitable process that we need to go through. And so I was thinking, I want to talk about how there is nothing to fear about death. So I would hope that one of our mantras is, I have nothing to fear about death. And to allow those words aren't always sufficient, but words can help us expand, get out of ourselves. Words can help us get out of the usual dread that we feel when we think of the word death, because words are symbols of our expansion, of our learning, of our enlightenment, so to speak. So my goal is to find a way not to be fearful about death. And at the same time, of course, if we tend to have fear about death, we are also very inclined to have fear about life and about going through life with peace and with love and with conscious awareness that things are uncertain. They will always be uncertain. And to be able to welcome that uncertainty and to live in that uncertainty is a true gift that we must only give ourselves, because we are the only ones who will experience a transition out of that uncertainty. So we do this, of course, with our awareness. Our greatest gift is our awareness, which I'm not going to talk about today. But I urge you to remember that. So let me read you a little bit from Sark, from Eat Mangoes Naked. She is talking about visiting a friend of hers who was dying. I honored her life. I watched myself change and my resistance slip away. I honored her life and now her death. I felt such pleasure sitting on her bed, just holding her hand. We communicated without words, and I could clearly feel our souls speaking. In these moments, I thought of what Ram Dass had written. Death is not an outrage, and it felt true. Her name was Rebecca. So her friend died, and she went for a walk in the woods to honor her. And usually she felt some fear and anxiety walking along this path that led to the ocean. She lives in California. And she found that after all she'd been through, there was no fear left. She had no fear of walking at night. She walked with prayers in her heart and felt fully supported. So later that night, my friend Rebecca appeared clearly in my dream and said to her, first of all, time is not what you think it is. What might seem like 4 seconds could actually be 1,000 years. You are living right next to parallel universes, all stacked up next to each other. You're right. I'm in everything. I am not the formerly solid body you knew as Rebecca. There is absolutely no reason to be sad. She awakened to her pleasures of death. So Rebecca told me she was excited to die, and I believed her. Clearly, this means that I could also be excited to take that journey. So during our discussion at March Death Cafe, which Dallas and I started a monthly Death Cafe on Tuesday evening 2.5 years ago, during our discussion, I started getting very excited about death. And what I realized was that if this seems so simple, but at the moment it just opened me up in a way that I had not remembered for a long time. So a few weeks ago, Eric talked about a coin. If life is on one side of the coin and death is the other side of the coin, then when you look at the coin from the side, from the edge, thank you, Eric, it's one. Life and death are one. So in that moment, I felt so close to death, and it was not frightening. It was not frightening. There is nothing inherently frightening about death, that we haven't learned from somewhere else. Our inner being, our inner essence, our essential being will not ever tell us that there's anything to be frightened about, either in life with its inherent uncertainty or in death with its unknown, its mystery, its unknown. So let me quote from Khalil Gibran. I wrote it here. It's from the prophet. You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl, whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day, cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. So I realized in going through cancer treatment that my task was to be able to see everything differently. So I really I took a lot of quiet time by myself and walked in the woods and started talking to the trees. And I started apologizing to the trees because I walked in this 12-acre woods behind where we live that had been forested the July before a year ago. And the tree cutters cut at the bottom, and then they cut about 30 or 40 feet up. So they had this one big log, but they left the whole top of the tree. The whole top of the tree is still there in the forest. It's still there, lying in the forest. So it was unbelievably healing to me to walk among the trees and to touch the trees and to touch the stumps and say, I'm sorry. And because I realized then, and I think about it now, that trees are a very much a higher life form that and this life form is essential to us for our own lives. And nature, of course, has always been healing to me, because when I was little, I remember being just chased out of the house because my mother had these 3 little girls and they were just exuberant balls of energy, and it just wore her down. And I suppose it was horrible to be chased out of the house, but it turned out to be an incredible gift, because I love nature and nature loves me. I began much more as in my healing of my cancer by walking in the woods and apologizing to the trees. I realized that death was part of the tree's process too, and that as they teach us, we have the opportunity to see nature as the greatest gift that we have, besides each other. So, if life and death are one, how does that change anything? I need a Kleenex. Do you have a Kleenex? Never mind. I'll use my jacket. I'll use my top. I'm good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, I have lots of Kleenex. If life and death are one, how does that change anything? So we're afraid of losing everything. And yet at the same time we realize that we will eventually lose everything. So we have the opportunity to offer no resistance to that sense of loss. And no resistance to experiencing grief that of a loss of a loved one. But to let go for our own death, it's hard. It's a struggle for us, but we can do it. We can learn how to do it. If we cannot let go of our stuff, how will we ever be happy to the idea of dying to this life of ours? We must let go of our stuff. And personally, I hang on to it all with dear life. But the harder part is not the stuff, even though we resist, and it's very easy to see that we resist. We have to let go of our expectations, our desires, our dreams, and our goals. And life itself. We think we have to let go of life itself. So I have this awareness. That death, as we experience our own death, let us experience this process as our greatest spiritual experience. And I know that many of you have had spiritual experiences. Just this sense of upliftment and expansion and well-being and a sense of powerfulness and gratitude. So I propose that to die from this life is to awaken to another life. Let's think of dying. Let's think of it in a different way. Let's reformat. Let's recontextualize the ideas that we have about death. And I'm sure many of you have done this. That as I'm sure many of you are curious, our letting go of this world is a profound release. And it's a great leap of consciousness. And we do it, when it comes to that time, we do it willingly. We don't always get a chance to plan it well. But now's a good time. Now's a good time. So as we let go, each in our own way, we get an opportunity to, when we know that death is just a breath away, we get an opportunity to live in the present moment. It's to invite us to live with profound gratitude for all that we can love and all that we can create and all that we can enjoy. Eckhart Tolle says, death is a stripping away of everything that is not you. So as we go through our lives, we don't always know what the essence of ourself is because we are attached to these bodies. But these bodies can help us make these bodies are the medium of that transition that we make from this life into the next life. The secret of life is to die before you die, and you find out in that emotional awareness. It's a lot about emotional awareness, that there is no death in spirit. As we go into our next life, we will not experience death in the same way, because there, wherever there is, which is also right here, and it's also right here now, because there is no time. There is no death, because there's no knowledge of death anywhere but here. Does that make sense? So keep asking questions. Keep exploring your feelings. As the answers come in feelings as well as in words, the answers come to us as we ask questions of our spirit. The answers come in many ways. It comes through our bodies. The answers come through our bodies. The answers come through our feelings and emotions, as well as our minds. I propose that we have faith in our divine self and listen and feel for the intuitive messages that our divine source is offering to us, and trust that we are being held in more love than we can humanly know, in fact. So that's my part. Now it's your turn.